Hi everyone. I'll get right into it. Basically, in 2000, Digital Planet took its first step into e-commerce, selling consumer electronics online. At the beginning, we had to take into account that customers were not familiar with buying things online. We had to communicate with them in avenues that they were familiar with. So a lot of groundwork was done offline. We had a small group of staff that manned our call center, and they actively sought business. Another key part of our online presence was to build our database through email marketing, either through competitions or from partnerships with other companies. We also offered discounts, vouchers to drive sales, as well as we hosted third-party advertising. At the time, there was no precedent, and there were few competitors. The technology just wasn't available locally. However, we realized there were no off-the-shelf products for e-commerce, so we actually had to design the platform by ourselves. The technology was, it wasn't the only challenge we faced. Our audience was extremely skeptical. The average South African was still getting used to the internet, and e-commerce didn't even enter their vocabulary. The idea of making financial transactions online was a complete turnoff to most of consumers. On a macro level, we had to deal with the fact that the infrastructure wasn't there yet. A large majority of South Africans were not online, and if they were, the connections were slow and unreliable. However, it wasn't all doom and gloom. The market was still in its infancy, and there were very few players. It was an exciting time. We managed to try to build this market from the ground up, but it was hard work, and we learned valuable lessons. In a sense, we had it a little bit easier than startups today, because we could basically find our feet without this intense competition. The South African e-commerce market back then can be compared to what marketing thought leader Geoffrey Moore calls the early market in his book Inside the Tornado. The early market is defined in two types, the techies and the visionaries. Techies are the innovators who create the market and set the precedents for others to follow. The visionaries are those who see the potential in the new market and show investment even though it's not yet developed. Digital Planet was definitely the techies in this scenario, developing the technology so others could follow. I was introduced to Moore's work through Arthur Goldstock, just as Luke was saying. And he's a pioneer in his field. Basically, he heads up Worldwide Works. And Inside the Tornado explores the technology adoption lifecycle and the characters that define each phase in the development. I think it's a great blueprint for e-commerce in South Africa, or e-commerce in the world, actually. In this lifecycle, innovators produce the need, to develop the early market to cross what Geoffrey Moore describes as the chasm. The tornado happens after that. It's, the most exciting part of it, when the boom is adopted in this mass market and it becomes mainstream. Once the technology adoption cycle moves onto the mainstream, the sales funnel gets emptier and companies receive more resistance on the price points because technology is a commodity. To be able to survive and profit, it's achieved then through cost cutting. The final two phases of are marked by decline and deterioration until the cycle ends. So, where is South Africa in the e-commerce cycle? We basically in the situation where in the last 10 years there's a lot of positive developments and the growth is in the online space. On this graph, you basically can see that there's been massive leaps in the last few years in South Africa's undersea cable. This means that local internet connections will be getting faster and have greater capacity. The growth in the South African internet users has been steadily rising. in the last 2 decades. The number of unique broadband users has skyrocketed since 2003, increasing by 2.3 million in the last 7 years. People are becoming more familiar with the internet as a trusted and reliable source of information and communication. It's strange for most of us to think of life before the internet because it's become such an integral part of our lives. So how can our local business, our local e-commerce business, use these developments to cross the chasm into mainstream, a place where you achieve sustained profitability? Basically, it's nurturing innovation to survive. The personality of e-commerce, of the e-commerce market, is actually fickle. Technology develops rapidly, e-commerce sites start every day, and there's wide access to information. Consumers demand a lot, and it takes a lot to retain their loyalty. Over the past 10 years, Digital Planet has focused on a number of key aspects to keep the customers satisfied. Keeping up to date with the technology gave us a reference point in the beginning, but we had to carry on nurturing this innovation. We also learned from some of these mistakes. At the start, we tried very hard to grow our database. In a few years, we grew our database to about 350,000. But we then realized that it was about the quality. It was actually about making sure that we had a base that wasn't as large, but actually was refined and was streamlined in terms of what we were trying to offer them. Another formula for us was basically to make sure that there's stock available, because there's nothing more irritating or frustrating to the customer than finding out what they actually bought online is actually unavailable. So we had to make sure that we built strong relationships with our suppliers to make sure that we could ship in quite quick times. But that's a constant challenge for us. The market online is still small, and we still struggle to make sure that our items can be delivered quickly. We've integrated our systems to make sure that our back end and front end is always real time, and this helps us in terms of making sure that our inventory levels are matched. And this relates to the fact that if we can deliver on time, the customer's experience is better, and obviously with high quality goods, the customer will shop again. While it's important to make a profit, we also have to be competitive in our pricing, because there's lots of price comparative sites like Price Check, and customers are more sus than ever before. And basically, they can check your pricing and make sure that they're getting the best price. So you have to actually add value to them in multiple ways. And after-sales service is really important. Range is something key that has happened, I suppose, in a bigger environment. In the Amazon world, they've got millions of products. When we initially started, our logo was buy anything, and we had about 10,000 products. We've subsequently actually cut down our range, and it's become more focused so that we could actually measure our ROI on our products, and we've actually gone down to under 3,000 products. And this has made us a little bit more successful in the products that we actually sell. Design is really important because we live in a culture that is very visual. So branding and design is important, and it's key to define your brand's look and feel across all communications. Not only is the design important, but obviously the user experience has to be matched with that. Part of our business is developing and running other online retail websites. We run a key relationship with HP, and they've got a strong online marketing strategy to make sure they're building their online presence. Another business that we started with about 5 or 6 years ago was actually Reggie's, and it took them about 3.5 years ago to build a database of a certain size. And when we engaged with them on Toys R Us, it took 6 months to build a database of a similar size. So two things basically happened. The one is that obviously the market grew, but we also realized that Toys R Us, the market was more, I suppose the LSM for Toys R Us were people that were actually online and were actually more interested in buying things online. Getting back to Geoffrey Moore's paradigm, we see that one of the things he talks about is the three images shown on this slide is basically the gorilla, the chimps, and the monkeys. And the gorillas is basically, can be defined in multiple ways, but basically, he is the market leader. He sets the bar and enjoys the majority of the market. The chimps have the opportunity to cash in but miss out, and the monkeys are the ones who are in the niche markets that are not covered by the market leader. They make a profit by catering to small sub-markets and offer low price points. America is the most developed and mature e-commerce market. The tornado has happened and the main players have been defined. Amazon is very much the gorilla in the international market. So what is the next secret of success? In a nutshell, Amazon simply does what companies want. They refer to something called the Bezos flywheel, named after its founder, Jeff Bezos. And they talk about range, and Amazon has a large range of everything from goods, books, digital equipment, clothing, automotive parts. And this stands them in good stead with their customers because it's basically a one-stop shop. They do have low price points that are cheaper than some of their retail counterparts like Walmart and Target, but that gives them a competitive edge. A key thing is around their customer experience. Their rating around customer experience is much better than their counterparts. So the question is, has the tornado begun in South Africa? If you think about the local gorilla in our environment, it's quite interesting to note that Kalahari is probably our local gorilla. They've got the similar checkboxes that Amazon have. They have a large range. They've got competitive prices, and they've got good customer service. Netflix and Yuppiechef are examples of what Geoffrey Moore terms monkeys in the online retail market. These two businesses have managed to capture their respective niche markets and satisfy the most important aspects of online retail. They also know their market and their price points and their ranges accordingly. I think that they're great examples of what niche online retailers should be doing. So how have these developments affected local e-commerce? And some of these figures Luke has gone through, but as you can see, the percentages are dramatic. From 252 million in 2002 to 2.6 billion in 2011, the growth rate is going to be growing at over 40%. The South African landscape for e-commerce is dominated in Gauteng. So 48% of people actually shop in the Gauteng area, and it decreases in the other sectors. The most active age bracket is between 25 and 45. So what does the future of the online retail business in South Africa look like? For me, it looks great, and there's definitely lots of potential. It's still young, and if we look at the industry, it's caught a number of international investors. New York-based hedge fund Tiger Global Management is an example of one that's invested in South Africa's online retail. They've invested in Buy, Jobs, Safari Now, Private Property, Pay Fast, Take a Lot. And it just shows that there's massive growth, and this is going to continue year after year. However, there are still a few challenges. Without a solid infrastructure, your lifespan will be limited. You have to ask yourself who your market is, and do you have a solid supply chain in place? Obviously, with the new Consumers Act, it's harder to build databases, and to touch your customers in the right way is going to get harder and harder. There's a cautionary tale around Best Buy. Best Buy at one stage was a $64 billion business, and now it's in serious trouble. They lost 40% of their value. And the reality is that their business wasn't aligned in all ways. It was difficult for them to manage their online space and also their customer service in store. And there wasn't this message that was going throughout their business, and they've suffered drastically. There's a view that this business may not exist in the next few years. So it's very important to make sure that the online element of your business supports your in-store environment. The digital participation curve is something that Luke mentioned as well, in terms of the fact that customers are only used to, or will only start engaging with you in an e-commerce way, actually buying things online, if they've been online users for at least 5 years. And this relates to them having the experience, the comfort, the confidence, and the trust. As you can see on this graph, that number is growing quite a bit in terms of the participation level. And we're at the beginning of this, and I think you can see that the growth levels on the participation is growing tremendously. So what is the next tornado? Obviously, everyone's talked about mobile, and mobile is growing in a massive way. The mobile presence has to be integrated into your sites, and whether someone's going to actually shop using their mobile device is difficult at this point, but they're definitely using their mobiles to compare pricing and do research in a big way. The increase in mobile phone usage is creating more opportunities for the smart marketers. And at this point, we have to make sure that we're integrating our marketing activities in the mobile space. Social shopping and social media is obviously growing, and there's lots of apps in the market, and that makes the shopping useful, sharing of ideas. One of the companies that have done this well is obviously Groupon. They've obviously hit the world in a big way. If you think about their business model, you don't know whether it can sustain for a very long time, but the reality is they've actually made a massive shift in what they actually do. In a time where it's so hard to build a database, millions and millions of people, even in the South African market, have actually subscribed to their newsletters and their updates. We're actually moving into a shopping experience termed omni-channel, where you need to be involved with new thinking, new management structures, and new strategies. To compete successfully with online retailers, traditional retailers need to develop smart strategies to leverage their unique physical advantage in combination with digital advantages. An example of this is actually Woolworths. They're a retailer that's made the successful jump from offline to online. They have a beautifully designed website which is consistent with their branding. They've got a great customer experience where you can learn their source information and even purchase their products online. Their Facebook and Twitter pages are managed really well, and it gives a seamless customer experience. So over the last 30 minutes or so, I hope you realize that the tornado of e-commerce is coming into South Africa. There's definitely challenges, but the stage is set for exciting journeys to start in the e-commerce in South Africa. Thanks.